So, Hope and Homes for Children is one of the 3 charities that Grapevine supports. It's a charity very close to my heart, as my father started supporting Hope and Homes about 25 years ago. He felt, as do I, very strongly how vital it is to eradicate orphanages around the world and for children to be loved, nurtured, and to belong. Through the Sumner Wilson Charitable Trust, we're still supporting them now. Today, I am interviewing Stefan Darabus, who's been working with Hope and Homes for many years. So, hi, Stefan. Thank you so much for talking to us today. Stefan, you are the man who closes orphanages. To some, that sounds shocking and counterintuitive. After all, orphanages are there to look after orphans who need help, aren't they?
Well, they should be, but unfortunately, orphanages do not offer children what they long most for, and that is love. Every child needs love, a family, and affection, and no one can get these things in an orphanage. They get some food, they get some clothing, and they get a roof above their head, but that's about it. And this is never enough for a child. A child needs affection, attachment, a mother, a father, or a significant adult figure whom they can relate to. And unless they have these, their childhood turns into a nightmare. And this is why orphanages are a nightmare to all the children who unfortunately survive in them. This is why we close them down, because we want these children to live in families and to have the love they deserve as children.
Yeah. So why dedicate your time to Hope and Homes for Children?
It's about 22 years since I started working with Hope and Homes for Children, and my initial memory is that of a 0 to 3-year-old baby orphanage, which I visited with Mark and Caroline. It was the 3rd floor of a hospital in Kafnik, a small town in northern Transylvania, close to the border with Ukraine. And we were met by 86 babies there. Many of them were 2 in 1 cot. There were 2 big rooms which sheltered all these children. Many of those cots didn't have bars. There was no noise. All the babies were basically silent. It was like being in a cemetery, just that the place was full of babies. So it was a very shocking environment to step into once you opened that door and got into that big room full of children, full of babies. And the smell was awful. It was a pestilential smell, because basically those babies were unchanged. Their diapers were all dirty, and they were staying like that because there were only 2 members of staff on shift, and they could hardly feed and change the babies by turn. They didn't have time to do it in good time. The babies had got used to not being looked after, to not being hugged. That's where the silence comes from, because they really got used to the fact that nobody was there to respond to their needs. Nobody was there to hug them if they cried. And that was for me really, really shocking. Until then, what I wanted to do was to become a professor in a university, and I really wanted to teach literary theory to students. But then in an instant, my life changed, because I realized that there was something else I could have done with my life, and that's when everything started.
Yeah, it's so shocking, isn't it? I think the visit that I paid to Romania last year with Davina, that last, the orphanage, the institution we went to on our last day, we found that truly, truly shocking. And I think you just see that once and it just makes you really, really want to help, really want to just eradicate them. It was appalling.
There's been a lot of research over the last 20 years on the impact of institutionalization upon children, upon babies more particularly. And what has been clearly demonstrated is that basically the synapses in a child's brain do not connect. And there are parts in a baby's brain which remain undeveloped. And these areas are related to long-term attachment, to affection, to understanding, to patience, to love, to long-term relationships. These are all areas to trust. These are all areas of the brain which in the brains of those babies who grow up in institutional environments simply do not develop. There's been this research which proved that family life actually allows these synapses to link to each other and therefore the brain to develop normally. The brain of the babies, of the children growing up in institutional environments do not develop normally. This is why we do this. This is why we take children out of institutions and place them into family environments. The institution you saw with Davina was one for youngsters, children and youngsters with severe special needs. Many of those severe special needs might have been accumulated in the institution because the impact of loneliness, isolation, lack of touch, lack of hugging, lack of eye contact on children growing up is irreversible and you know, really, really frightening.
Absolutely appalling, really awful. And how did you actually become involved in the work? So 22 years ago, I think you said, you first went to this orphanage. How did that come about?
Basically, I went joining a group of English people who visited Kavnik orphanage as a translator, because I was a student in humanities, so I was really good in English. And that's how I got in. That's how I visited that first baby orphanage. And that's how I basically realized that there was something really, really important for me to do. And I wanted to embark in doing this, and I was given the chance to do it. And ever since then, I haven't stopped. This is what I've done with my team, and this is what I still do today. And we will do this until institutions are history in Romania and then in other countries as well.
Yeah. So you must have encountered some really tough stories, situations, when you must have met some really inspiring children and families. When we were in Romania together, we met some amazing people. Can you tell us a bit about how they're all getting on and everything?
Yes, you must be talking also maybe about Gita and Teddy, or about others, or about Norby. If we are to talk about Gita and Teddy, they are very well. Teddy is now a mother. She's got a young boy, a toddler basically, yeah. And Gita works now in one of the family type homes we developed in Baia Mare. He works for the Child Protection Department, for the social services. So he does for others, exactly for others which are in his shoes just about 25 years later. And he tries to do it as well as he can, and he does a really good job. Teddy works with children. She does a lot of activities with them. They are both 100% into supporting others who are exactly where they were, and to improve their lives. So they are doing, they are really, really well. They enjoy being parents now. And, you know, I don't think that they could have been in a better place than they are.
Fantastic. I'm going to share with Grapevine members the short film about Gita, which I will put in a link, because it's very, very moving. And I think when we saw it at the boxing ball last year, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I don't think, was there?
Yeah, there wasn't quite true. I mean, his story is quite extraordinary, but it seems like it's taken out of a Hollywood movie, with his personal identity number being changed, with him actually having a mother in the maternity unit who should have taken him, but another young baby was taken in his place. And that's how he ended up in an orphanage. It's really mind-blowing. But there are so many incredible stories around us. So many of these stories you think, oh, it must have been invented. It couldn't have been real. So much drama happens in the real world. Yeah. I think it's almost incomprehensible. Fiction could have a lot to learn from the reality of the children and youngsters we work with.
Yes, yeah. And Stefan, how is coronavirus affecting you and the work of Hope and Homes?
Hugely. I would say that the pandemic, in addition to the medical shock and to the health disaster, creates a humanitarian crisis, because the poor and the very poor are getting poorer, and unbelievably poor. They are hungry in marginalized communities, in poor districts, with the families we work with. Basically, what they need is food, clothing, and the basics. They do not have the basics type of hygiene. Soap, detergents, they cannot basically wash their hands, wash their clothing. They need potatoes and flour for them to be able to make polenta and to have something to eat. Many of them do not have a roof above their head. Many of them have been thrown out from the apartments they rented because they can't pay for them anymore. A lot of them lost their jobs. A lot of the families we work with, because they are so poor and so marginal, they work by day. So they do not have permanent employment. Because of the fact that more than 1 million people lost their jobs in one of the countries in East Europe only, just to talk about Romania in this particular example, a lot of the people do not have work. They are unable to bring any sort of money home. So the presence that we are able to deliver and the support we are able to give through the food vouchers, for instance, is more important than ever. It is essential. It's the same in Bulgaria, it's the same in Moldova, it's the same in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The level of poverty and the humanitarian crisis that's undergoing the pandemics is of unconceivable dimensions.
And what are the other areas of the world, Rwanda and places, are they going through a terrible time with this pandemic as well?
They are, but it is not as bad. They are, but it is not as bad as it is in Europe, fortunately. Yeah. But I think that problems that we face in the work we do in Rwanda, for instance, are very different because the poverty levels are different, of course, and the fight for survival is even fiercer there. But luckily, the pandemics is not so aggressive in that part of the world as it is in Europe.
Yeah. Oh, well, Stefan, look, thank you very, very much. Well, Grapevine watchers, I hope this makes you see what an incredible charity Hope and Homes for Children is. and the genuine difference it makes to children's lives around the world. I know we're all in the same corona storm at the moment, but we're not all in the same boat. This pandemic is placing some of the world's most vulnerable children at urgent risk of losing their loving homes, their entire childhoods to the neglect of an orphanage. If you can help in any way at all, it would be utterly amazing. If you go to their website, which is hopeandhomes.org, you will be asked on there how you'll be asked whether there's an option as to how you heard about them for your donation. Please could you give the information that in the box that you heard through Grapevine, because they'd like to just be able to track if there have been some donations from you guys. So please, if you can, it would be amazing. Stefan, thank you so much. Really good to hear from you and to hear about everything, and hopefully our members will have found that very interesting as well.
Panda, thank you for your support, you and your audience as well, because it is going exactly where it needs to go, to the children who desperately need it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.